artificial intelligence or human intelligence?
Can I combine the both? We also didn't have a lot of money growing up. And so my parents would always have to kind of, make choices. It was more, do you really need that? Or do you,
Which makes total
can you do
sense.
without,
Yep.
which I should teach my kids. And those have helped me actually. If I think about when I'm talking to clients, that value piece comes to mind all the time.
Hi guys, today at the Future of Skills podcast, we're discussing nothing else but careers in tech. And our guest today is the lovely Supriya Dev-Purkaystha, who is the head of native advertising in the UK for Microsoft. Supriya, welcome.
Thank you for having me here.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure and honor. Supriya, we've been working together for quite some time as part of our client-side experience, your agency-side experience, but you've been in digital marketing for over 20 years now. It's an amazing, pathway that you've built along the side. And there have been across different types of digital media businesses that you have touched based on, such as independent agencies, such as brands in-house, and at media owner side, which have helped you portray that leadership role of yours that you've had in various sort of experiences so far. So as a strategist and growth hacker with a communication sciences background, Supriya thinks that audience centricity is key to growth and that our customers reflect our marketing strategy. I can resonate with that absolutely, because I think it's, if anything, is the source of where we should start when it comes to setting up any form of strategy. Now, Supriya has also received many awards. I need to call them out, that's why I'm reading. So the awards are quite impressive. You have been called out for the Performance Marketing Award Powerlist 100 in 2024, so most recent is this. Congratulations, by the way. Winning the Advertising Week Europe Future as a female award in 2023. You've been listed in the inaugural IB Top 100 BAME Leaders in Technology, the list by the Financial Times in 2018, and you've also been recognized as a digital hero for your passion for audience-centric marketing. It's an impressive list, Supriya. What makes it tick? Tell me.
I don't know, actually. I've got to admit, I was bowled over when I was nominated for the Future is Female Award and also for the Powerlist 100 because I didn't realise that people were recognising my work. So, yes, I obviously thank everybody that has recognised my work over time. And look, really what I do comes from a point of passion. It's what
Absolutely.
I love. It's what I enjoy. I've been in the industry for a while because I love being here. And I really do think it's important to get our marketing right, and so I guess this is just part and parcel of me.
If anything, as part of me knowing how you work and your culture building, your attitude that absolutely speaks to many and the people that you work with, it definitely comes through. And we'll start off, I know we've touched base on the awards because this is basically part of your bio and how you've grown up over the years. But our traditional question is around the 3 words that our guests would describe best. Can you please kindly share your end?
Sure. So I had to think about this quite a lot over the years because I think it's kind of changed based on how I perceive myself. And we had a bit of discussion about this in terms of, I think if you asked me 10 years ago, I would have said, I'm great at sales and I'm great at, coming up with ideas. I think my words have evolved now. And I've got a better understanding of actually how I work. And so I think my 3 words would be strategic thinker,
Sure.
innovative, and also advocacy. So whether that's advocating for ideas or advocating for people, I get behind a movement or an idea and, see it through. So advocacy is my 3rd one.
Thank you, Supriya. I can see why you've made these choices, especially when it comes to advocacy. There's a lot of projects that you've been part of. You've pioneered many of them, right? You've also been mentored to many. And it all speaks to the fact that when it comes to a certain idea, a certain project, it's something where you put in the most, right? You kind of make that effort and you make and see things happen. And it's probably one of those traits of yours which have guided me nicely towards asking you to be the guest for this show. show, because it did remind me from our experience in the past when we were working together for New Look, and we did so for no less than 4 years, if I recall correctly. It sounds like it's a lifetime, but it's been a great experience that I totally recall with a lot of pleasure and good memories put together. And at that time, you were the agency lead.
Mhm.
And I was the client lead, and we, synced up, clicked together. And at the time, it was interesting for me to realize years after that you have built a team from as many as 30 initially as part of the agency side, and you've grown them to 1,000 people globally. What has helped you? What type of skills do you think have helped you employ them at the right time so that you can make this happen?
So I should caveat, I guess, the 30 to 1,000 we did as a team, as a business. I was
That's right
in a
answer
leadership
for right leader.
I was in a leadership position, so I guess I was part of that team that helped build it. And look, I think for me, it was very much about, how do I help grow this business? So it wasn't necessarily about how do I get it from 30 to 1,000.
Sure.
And I don't even think we thought about how do we get it to 1,000. What we wanted to do was really good work for really good clients. And so what we focused on is how do we get the right clients? We had a great team that we were already working with. I think, we talked about some of the things that they were doing that they thought was, just everyday tasks. Actually, in a lot of places, those things weren't being done.
Yes.
And for me, it was about how do I showcase the work that they do. I was in a business development role, early doors, and then moved into client leadership afterwards. But it's always about how do I demonstrate the work that my team is doing? How do I demonstrate, how we can support our clients? And so I always came from things from a solutions perspective. So I would always kind of go to my clients and kind of, we'd be like, what is it that we can do for you? What is it that you need as a business? What is it that you need help with? And then think about actually how can we help solve that problem? So one of the skills that I drew upon massively, especially when I was dealing with clients, was problem solving.
Yes.
But if I think back to how we grew as a business as well, being in that position of face-to-face with clients, sometimes hearing the good, sometimes hearing the not so good, actually put me in a really good position to be able to come back to the business and go, we might have a bit of an issue here. It's really funny, actually, because this seems to be the month of reconnecting with old clients, because I met with someone that I hadn't seen in a very long time. Again, someone I had worked with when I was at Forward 3D. And I gave him some feedback, and I was like, actually, we had a really heated discussion as one of our last conversations. And he gave me a lot of feedback. And I kind of told him that after that feedback, I pushed for the business to have a client leadership role within the business, because I was like, we really need this. We really need to have somebody that's thinking about the client. Not that the teams aren't, but sometimes on a day-to-day basis, you can get so into the weeds of what you're doing for your channel in your platform that actually putting your head above and really being able to understand what is it that your clients are challenged with can be quite difficult, or to even understand how what you're doing could be impacting something else can be quite difficult. So we actually, the client leadership department actually came from some of the feedback that we got from clients. So that problem solving skill set, I would say, came into effect there as well, where I was like, well, okay, we've got a bit of a challenge here. How can we solve that? And I guess, a lot of the things that you talked about pioneering, it came from that problem-solving lens of, okay, well, I can see either an opportunity here, or I can see there's a challenge here. How can we answer that? And so I would use that strategic thinking, sometimes innovation, thinking about what new things could we do. I would also think about what do we have available that we can repurpose or we can mold into something slightly different. And so I had a lot of fun in actually trying out different roles and incubating different departments as well. But of course, getting to the position that we were took time. It took great clients. It took clients believing in the work that we do and giving us the opportunity to demonstrate the work that we do as well. So it was those relationships that we formed that built trust, that enabled us to grow as a business whilst our clients grew as well.
Excellent answer. Thank you so much, Supriya. I definitely resonate with quite a few aspects here that you've shared. The problem-solving piece, it comes to me, and the way that I know in the past we've interacted as well, and how you've come across in that communication, is that you definitely weren't indifferent to the type of challenges that we as clients at the time were experiencing. If you would have seen that there was something, either a stumbling point or, a particular hurdle that we were needing to navigate through, you were the type of team leader who would come across and ask the question, is it something that we could be doing to help you with that? And I think that's crucial, really, not only from the perspective of what outlines you as a type of person, the caring person in that realm, but also someone who, as you say, you're coming up with a solution, but at the same time, what that does, because the solution is there on the table, you help it solve, it then creates trust. Trust in return then creates new businesses, right? And that is your instrument for scale. In that case, right? So, and here is the turning point of a new question, which I had prepared to and nicely going towards it. And this question is around the growth hacking piece. You have been quoting in your resume, in your bio, that, growth hacking is a term that you see yourself quite close to. And there's a good reason as to why. As part of your Microsoft experience, I suppose, is also a definitive term, isn't it? Where you're also applying it to the way you're handling your team's communication, but also how you're handling your client communications. Can we please dig deeper under it and see, how do you define growth hacking, and why do you think it's such an important skill?
So, if we go back to, so I didn't actually know I was doing growth hacking. I think I should probably say that first as well.
Yeah,
I had to be told that I was doing growth hacking. And again, this goes back to the agency days.
Yes.
And I had to look up what growth hacking means when I was first told, and it actually comes from like the tech startup environment. And if I think about how it's defined, actually, Forward 3D was a great environment for growth hacking, because although it wasn't your standard startup when I joined, it was 30 people, and it had been it had been around for a while. It was still innovative enough, and it was adopting agile methodology, which is one of the crucial points of growth hacking, which puts it in that great kind of sphere of being a business that was adopting growth hacking itself. Me personally, I guess, I learned what agile methodology means, and I really adopted it. And I think that's the first thing, is I could really get behind agile methodology, because what agile is all about is about testing, learning very quickly, understanding that there are going to be failures, and that's fine. But, a failure is a point to pivot off and go, okay, well, that didn't work. Let's try something else. And if that doesn't work, let's try something else. It allows you to really come up with multiple ideas, multiple strategies, and be comfortable with saying, we're going to try this, and if that doesn't work, we're going to move to this, and if that doesn't work, we're going to move to this. So, growth hacking is about being agile. It's also about being cost effective, not necessarily cost efficient, but cost effective. And that is being mindful of the cost of the burden. And that could be a monetary cost, financial cost. It could be a resource cost as well. But it's about understanding what that cost is, and being as cost effective as you can be for a business, so that you can grow and you can scale. And it's about innovation. So we've talked about innovation. It's about being able to come up with solutions. It's about being able to look for solutions. If there's something in the market, is adopt it in, or if there isn't, can you create something that you have? So I guess I was in the right setup at Forward to be growth hacking, and that's where I spent most of my time. But if I think back to my NetBooster days or my Havas days, a lot of those businesses as well were quite early in their digital journey. So when I joined Media Contacts, it was when they had, Media Contacts was the digital arm of MPG, which was the traditional media buying arm, and it was still quite nascent within those businesses. NetBooster was the UK. I was at the UK office for NetBooster. NetBooster was already established in Paris, and the UK office was growing. I was lucky to be in businesses, or maybe I'm drawn to businesses that have the potential to allow me to evolve and grow those businesses, and
I can see
therefore,
that for sure. Hmm.
use my growth hacking skills. Marketing also, you use growth hacking skills in marketing. And again, it comes down to, are you able to take in all the data, understand what it's telling you, take those insights, build hypotheses from those insights, test those hypotheses, be sure that you may fail on some of those hypotheses, but have enough risk within you and within your budget and within the CFO's budget to take some of those risks, because some of those are going to be really important learnings. Even the failures are learnings, because it's called fast failure. And fast failure is the idea behind it is that it's not a big failure, but you've learned very quickly and you're able to pivot off it. And those that can adopt that within their marketing strategies actually have been able to evolve and grow and scale quicker. So growth hacking for businesses is very similar to marketing, just kind of different modalities within them.
Thank you so much for explaining that. It sounds that, and you have quite emphasized the idea of hypothesis, test and learn principles. And to me, this is very close to the ability to measure correctly your data, being very close to it, monitoring it closely. As part of our experience at New Look, I think that was, if anything, one of the strongest pillars of growth at the time, wasn't it?
Yes.
You guys were the ones to have recommend certain type of measurements for us, which was very custom made. It was a lot of work.
Yes.
The team, I suppose, internally were quite a few challenges to navigate through initially when they would have put it in place, because I do appreciate it could have been one of the kind and probably some of the very first type of initiative of the kind, but it did help open eyes.
Yes.
Right? So how would you say, from your perspective, given the fact that at the time probably you needed to push through certain ideas internally that were completely new, something that the team were not necessarily initially comfortable with, but you needed to find the right skill set in the team, you needed to then explain what the complex looks like so that they can then onboard and navigate it with you. How did that work?
So I think the first thing is we had a great relationship, right? And it stems from the team at New Look, your team, coming to us with, here's a problem that we have. And we went very top level business problem. We went, here's the business challenge, or not challenge. Here's the challenge we've been given by the business. That's actually what it was. Is the marketing department, the e-commerce team had been given a challenge by the business, to grow. And we sat down at the beginning of the fiscal and we were told, here's what we've got to hit. It's our joint target. We're not going to hide anything from you. This is what we are trying to do together. How are you going to help us? And I kind of took that internally first and went, we've got a challenge. How are we going to do this? And we brainstormed together. Now, we talk about diversity and inclusion quite a bit. If I think back then, that is diversity in action, is being able to get individuals from different parts of the business to come together and go, okay, we got a challenge here. Who's got ideas? How can we solve this? And actually from that, we started to see other skill sets that people had that they weren't necessarily using on a day-to-day basis, but they had passion for, and they could actually utilize it in those ways. So actually, the measurement you were talking about was our data-driven attribution model, which was the brainchild of Jonathan Mulligan. And he was a PPC analyst, and he had been working on the measurement solution. So, he, for example, was like, well, we could use data-driven attribution model, for example. And then we had other members in the PPC team as well that were quite happy to utilize their SQL script. We were very lucky. We had our own tech platform, and we had lots of analysts that had SQL query capabilities, which I lack completely. I wish I had them.
Same, Supriya. I understand the meaning of them and the value, but
no idea how to utilize it. But they were able to put their hand up and go, look, I will help gather the data in this way so that it's not cumbersome on people, and we can come together. So we actually first had a conversation internally as to what we could do, how we could bring this together, and then came back with, here's some ideas that we have. This is what we think we would need to do to be able to help you hit those. And I think it is about not having the answer straight away, but being given permission to come back internally, have an open conversation with everyone to go, we've got a problem, or we've got an opportunity here. How are we going to do it? Who's in? Who's got the skill sets? and have those conversations. And that's how we were able to then come back to you with, well, let's try some. And it was something new for us, because we came back with the proposal of, let's do multi-channel, let's work to, single KPIs and things like that, which was unheard of at the time, because it was very much, PPC KPIs and display KPIs and social KPIs. And we were like, well, actually, let's try and break the mold a little bit here. We were testing. You had enough faith in us to allow us to test, which was, testament to the relationship that we'd built, I think.
100%.
And I think that the team really grew from that as well, because not only the team, but the business as well was able to understand, oh, we can do this.
As a proposition now separate, isn't it?
Exactly. And we also were able to start building processes like having multi-channel team meetings and having multi-channel workflows. And we used to have work boards at the time. We're like, okay, how do we build work boards out that... And the client leads would be like, well, how do we build that all together? So it was a real team effort, a multi-team effort, but also a team effort in terms of our wider client agency team as well.
How interesting. I feel so fortunate that, at the time, obviously, when we were working together, you wouldn't know all these intricacies, right? And the behind the scenes and the whole work and the magic that happens with the teams when they get together.
Yeah.
Now that you're revealing this, I'm grasping some of the nitty-gritty of what happened at the time, right?
Yeah.
Which is fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, it sounds that it's your ability that comes across of getting the team to work together, as you said, is the case of sourcing the right type of skill set from people who might not have necessarily exhibited them in the various circumstances before, but because now you had a task that aligned them all, they were able to speak up and say, oh, I can do that,
Yeah.
and that talks about the fact that there is this element of motivating others, inspiring them and getting the juices out, making sure that they can get the best out of themselves. To which case, I would love us to delve a little bit into the background, into what made you who you are today, Supriya, and that is your early days, your education, your parents, your mentors at the time. Tell us a little bit about that, please.
So, my parents are first generation migrants to the UK. My dad actually came much earlier than my mother did. He came in the 60s, so he was one of the first kind of Bangladeshis who migrated over. And my mother joined him about a year before I was born. I have I'm one of 5 kids, and I'm bang in the middle. And one of my favourite terms is third child. And if anyone understands what that means, or middle child rather, not third child. If anyone understands what middle child syndrome is, you'll understand where I'm coming from. But, it meant that I had to be quite self-sufficient, I think. Sorry to my siblings who are listening to this. But, I was in the middle. My mother was new in the country. She had an older son and an older daughter already as well, who actually did a lot of my caring. I should point out, they did look after me a lot. But my dad came over to the UK with the purpose of building a life, but also catering to his family back home. So, he worked very, very hard, and he had an amazing work ethic. I think he worked 6 days a week. My mother was bringing us up. She went on to have 2 children after she had me as well. So there's 5 of us that she was bringing up, and she did a lot of that on her own with the support of my older brother and sister. Yeah, but they both had a lot of great work ethic. And so one of the things that I think I got from my father in particular, but also my mother, because she went on to work afterwards. Once my brother was 3 years old, she kind of she said she wants to work as well, so that we could have a little bit more income. And they were all very much would never miss a day of work. They would always make sure they were on time for work. And so I think this is very common for migrant parents is, kind of head down, do your work, never kind of argue back, and, make sure you do what you're told to do. I'm not saying that's great work ethic, but I got work ethic from there. So I was like, work is very important. I grew up with the understanding that work is very important. The other thing that my dad wanted was to make sure that we all had the education that him and mum didn't have, for various reasons. They were our family homes are in the village, and it wasn't customary for women to be educated, unfortunately, at that time at in higher education, or even in some cases actually in primary education as well. And so our parents wanted us to be educated, didn't necessarily have the facilities to support us themselves, so they relied on the schools massively. I must admit, I'm very fortunate to have teachers who understood that I wanted to learn, and they took the time to help me with any obstacles that I had. I used to sit outside my maths teacher's room at lunchtimes and go, "Can you help me with this question? Because I don't get it." Because I couldn't finish my homework otherwise. I mean, my brothers and sisters would help me, but they had their own studies. They were
Sure.
all
Yeah.
busy. We know how it is with siblings. It's not always that rosy. And they don't always have time. And I didn't have time for mine either. So we've all had to, not just me, all of our siblings have had to find our way with education, have had to source out people that can help us with education. So that, constant learning piece, I think, is something that I've got through my parents, in just going, learn. We want you to do well, not necessarily how.
Yeah.
Can't teach you how to do well, but we want you to do well. So that instilled in us to go and find ways in which we could, educate ourselves. And so I now say that I am a lifelong learner, and, any opportunity I get to learn, I grasp it. And that isn't always formal education either. It's, through podcasts, we talk about podcasts and books that we read and things like that. What learnings am I taking out of those from the conversations that I have with my team? My team teach me so much. It's amazing. So that lifelong learning is a skill that I would say I got from my parents. And then the other thing, we've talked about it already, but I think that cost effectiveness, that getting value out of stuff. If I think back, I can remember my dad going to the Indian gold shops and sari shops and haggling, because that's what you do back home. And he's like, yeah, but that isn't worth this much. It's worth that. That value thing, that worthiness of stuff. I remember the conversations. I remember him really going, but that material or that work craftsmanship isn't worth how much you want to sell it for, and having that conversation. I'm not saying he was right to go so low down on his pricing, but the conversation was really good for me to hear, because I was like, okay, there's a piece around value, about understanding what you're paying for, about understanding what you're getting out of it. So I call it cost effective. It's not necessarily cost effective, but we also didn't have a lot of money growing up. And so my parents would always have to kind of, make choices. They weren't difficult choices in terms of, it was more, do you really need that? Or do you,
Which makes total
can you
sense.
do without?
Yep.
Which I should teach my kids a little bit more about.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Agreed.
I think and those have helped me actually. If I think about when I'm talking to clients, that value piece comes to mind all the time. I'm like, what value am I giving to my clients? What is it that they're getting out of this? And that's where the problem solving comes from. So if I can position this from a point of, well, actually, you've got this challenge, or here's the opportunity, and here's how this can give you value in that, it makes it easier for me, because I can make sense of that. So for me, I have to make sense of stuff, and that has come from my parents, and how they've brought us up. And I don't know if they've done it intentionally, but that's what I've taken from them. So my parents are definitely my biggest mentors, for sure. And there's stuff that we learn every day about their lives. They about what they've gone through, and I have immense respect for what my parents have got. I don't think I appreciated what they went through growing up, but now as an adult, I'm very, very much appreciative of that.
Thank you so much for such a detailed, such a warm answer as well, that allows to see the values that you have been brought up with, and the values that you are instilling in your own communication, be it with the team or be it with the client side, because this frugality that you were talking about, the cost effectiveness. I don't know if you've seen the movie. It's called 100-Foot Journey. That is probably one of my favorites when it comes to this human type of interactions. The human skills. And this was this conversation between the buyer and the seller of a nice location. Who the buyer needed for a restaurant, just to build in and get into the community. And the seller was saying, yes, but I know that you're asking for every single penny out there. You're going into the hotel to negotiate even your room price, And he's like, that's nothing to be ashamed of. It's called frugality. And from the perspective of what you were sharing earlier, I find this is you being mindful of the fact that in your conversation with clients, for instance, that they also need to be responsible of their own budgets, right? And how they then navigate that route with, third parties, the agency partners that you guys are. It's also then, portraying them internally and how they manage this spend internally, which, if you're on their side from that perspective, that is grand.
Yeah.
That way you're helping them shine and it's the other way around as well, so it's a two-way stream. That is completely telling, I find, from the perspective of building the relationship. Now, if we're to dive deeper into the relationship building route, I know that there are certain topics, certain causes that you are particularly passionate about. And I know that this allows you to showcase certain skills that then build the bridge with other people who are probably less fortunate or coming from the backgrounds that are, needing some support these days. I know that you've been recognized as a passionate advocate for breaking down barriers to growth for people of color. Could you share some context behind this cause, and if it's something that you deeply believe in, why is that the case?
So I guess I should start with the fact that I am obviously a person of color, a woman of color, and I think also my background is I am Bangladeshi. I'm also a Hindu Bangladeshi, and so it's taken me a while, but as a Hindu Bangladeshi, we are a minority in our home country, and then in the UK, as part of the Bangladeshi community, we are a minority within a minority.
Oh, I didn't know that. See?
Yeah.
New things you find out every time.
So actually, when I was at school, I went to a school that was round the corner from my house. So my parents did no research and sent me to the closest school. We all went to the same school, by the way. So, my brother went there, my sister went. We all did very well coming out of it. But it was the school that was closest by. And obviously, I grew up in the 80s and 90s is when I was at school, and they were difficult times. And I was looking for people that could understand me, and I found it quite difficult because there was nobody like me apart from my sister.
Yep.
Who was older than me and left after a year of me joining the school. And then my younger sister who came afterwards, and I had a couple of cousins as well. But, we were family. There was no one else outside the family that was Hindu Bengali, that was like me. So I started to try and build friends. I had friends, by the way. I had a great group of girlfriends that I had throughout school. But outside of my close-knit friends, it was difficult for me because because of color. But I also found that even in the Bangladeshi community, I was not accepted as widely for religious reasons.
Right.
I mean, I was and I wasn't. There was a lot of stuff that went into it. But for me, I tried to break those barriers by building friendships, by building relationships, understanding their perspective. So one of the first things that I did was when there was enough of us, is I held an Eid party. Now, and that was from a lens of, it's only me here, so there's no point in doing something that was from a Hindu festival. But I was like, actually, Eid is a really big moment in time. They didn't have the voices themselves to ask to hold an Eid party, whereas I was teacher's pet. And I thought, well, why don't I utilize my position of power to go and ask for this? And they were like, yeah, let's do an Eid party. And so that was the first thing. So we got to come in, dress up in our saris and our traditional wear, and feast with the teachers. And so I was always looking for ways in which I could break down my own barriers, the own challenges I was having, either with the boys and girls within my class or within the wider community. And I found it was hard. It was challenging. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of effort. And so as I've gone through my educational life, I'm now kind of, working and in a leadership position. I got the opportunity through Media for All, which is an organization set up for Black, Asian and ethnic minority talent within the advertising industry to support them. It's a network to bring everyone together, and they had a mentoring program, have a mentoring program, I should say, which has now got 1,000 mentees, by the way.
Wow, amazing.
And so I first started mentoring. I actually applied as a mentee, and they put me down as a mentor. They were like, no, you're a mentor. So okay, all right. And so through that is when I started my mentoring. And I found it so rewarding. And so educational for me as well, to hear from others that their experiences were either similar or even different, but giving me more perspective on what is going on in the wider sphere, and allowing me to utilize my experiences and what I've learnt over life or working life to help them in navigating, give them empowerment, give them a voice, give them strategies to overcome the challenges that they've got. And I'm lucky to have great mentees who have fed back, and because it's important for me to understand, actually, is this helping you? Is this something that's important to you? And if it isn't, you should say it really quickly, because we don't want to waste your time, because you need to get what you need to get. And not all mentee-mentor relationships are click. It's important for you to click. It's important for you to have trust. But for me, it's about giving back and paving the way, paying it forward. But also, it's a learning experience for me as well. So if I can help others break down barriers, most likely it's going to also continue to help me in breaking down whatever barriers I might have. And they don't necessarily need to be barriers at work. It could be mental barriers or blocks that you have. We are a combination of the experiences that we have, of the stories that we've lived, of the stories we tell ourselves. I've had to learn that through a lot of therapy, but the stories we tell ourselves are really important. And I think it's important to hear other perspectives of those similar stories and help and understand how others have overcome them, to help yourself as well. So a lot of it is that yearning to continue to develop myself as well as support others in that.
Thank you so much, Supriya. You've mentioned the ability to mentor the others by, from what I understand from what you've just shared, is the ability to also listen to their pain points, to how they've navigated through their obstacles, at the same time trying to give back, or this feel that you're building a value for somebody. I'm sure that alongside of it, this value is being built by and for you at the same time. So it's like that force of good that navigates from one party to another, and that's admirable. It's admirable to find the time to be able to do that, but at the same time to make sure that you still stay true to your other commitments. And your mother, you've got so many other commitments alongside, aside from the day-to-day. It's a lot that I think other parties, the mentees, I'm sure, are appreciating about that. When it comes to building that pattern of the right decisions, of the right type of relationships with mentees, with your teams, that I presume there's a good parallel there. What do you think really helps when understanding what are some of the gaps that the other person might be feeling, that you can help them overcome those? Because I know we talked a little bit, alluded to this prior to the setup and the interview, that you were saying that it's really important to give the right feedback at the right time. Could you please shed some light into that? Because this is a skill in itself. Giving feedback is not always perceived with comfort, right? Because it depends on what the reaction might be from the other person. How are you seeing this your end?
So, so some of the things that we talked about previously is how feedback has been really, really important for me as well, right? Sometimes as a problem solver, and depending on how you are, I know that I'm that way. I'm like very eager to just get going and do stuff. And it doesn't sit well with everybody, right? Some people really need to understand what you're doing. Even if they trust you, they really need you to, tell them what you're doing so that they can continue to trust you. Whereas I was very much head first. And so I have had a lot of feedback in the past, which has helped me to then go, oh, right, okay, so we could have a better working relationship if I would stop and communicate with you better, right? So I've had lived that feedback kind of loop, and I've done it quite extensively. Like I did a 360 with 20 people, which is not not common, but because I was like, I need to really understand what's going on here, because there were lots of barriers that I was hitting. And so the importance of feedback, I think, in order for you to help someone understand the importance of feedback, it's important for you to have lived going through that and understanding. It's also important for people to understand how to give feedback.
Exactly.
And I think there are some good constructs that do that. So some of the peer-to-peer feedback programs that are in place are quite good at doing that. So they'll ask you for, tell me something that you're doing really, really well. Tell me something that you could be doing better. The wording that you use. So in school, you know, they will tell you is what worked well, www, and then they say even better if, you know, EBI. My kids use it all the time, and I was like, what is that? And they said, oh, it's the marking system in school. You know, what went well, they'll tell me what was good, and EBI is what I could do better. So, okay, so in school you're getting feedback. So people are used to getting feedback. It just matters on how you give it. Now, we talk about constructive criticism. Even the word criticism is taken, and constructive criticism can still be quite difficult, right? Intimidating. Yes. So I think it's really important in how you give feedback and people understanding your motives for giving that feedback. I think in order for people to be able to give you feedback comfortably, you need to actually go out and ask for feedback and be prepared that you are going to have to make changes. In order for that, it's really important for you to have a particular mindset, and that is a growth mindset. Like if you have a fixed mindset, if you think that, no, what I'm doing is right, and I did have that before I went and got feedback and got told, well, no, actually, not everything you're doing is right, Supriya. I did think that what I was doing was right and there was no other way of doing it. Yes, the feedback helped me open up my eyes and go, oh, right, there is a different way in which I could do this. There is a better way in which I could do this and bring everyone with me. So that growth mindset of the individual that is asking for feedback, or rather you have to have a growth mindset to ask for feedback, is really, really important. But feedback, I feel, is really crucial for anyone that wants to continue to develop. And again, that continuous development leads back to growth mindset, is something that has to be within somebody. I'm hoping that answered your question.
More than, if anything.
Okay.
I've gotten, I think, quite a few follow-ups from that. And thank you for letting me build on it, because not only have you mentioned the importance of the growth mindset that aligns with the good feedback and the constructive feedback, but you also mentioned that, you know, you shouldn't be afraid of receiving the constructive feedback, even if the terminology stands with the word constructive. But it's the sheer fact that, you know, it aligns with people's reaction and how they need to get prepared, I suppose, for that. And the fact that if they are having that strength in themselves to be able to receive it properly, then that is a building block as opposed to a stumbling block, right, in their career. And that's crucial, because my next question for you was related to that, Supriya. It was the thought of how do you react in an interview, for instance, and you're part of Microsoft now, you're in a leading role at Microsoft, whereby I'm sure that you're part of interviews, you're having to screen various candidates. How does that work? Are there any particular traits, behaviors that the company is looking for and is awarding internally, or are there certain that you guys are avoiding as part of the interview process?
We don't avoid necessarily. I guess if we're striving for certain characteristics, then you would automatically kind of be focusing on those as opposed to the opposites. But growth mindset is the biggest one, and it's one of the reasons why I was quite keen on Microsoft as an organization as well. So in this industry, where everything moves so fast,
It does.
and especially over the last couple of years, right, things have grown so quickly. It's really difficult for individuals to stay on top of everything. And so for us, we recognize that if you think you know everything, the likelihood is you're going to miss out on stuff that
Can't
you
agree more.
don't know. So growth mindset, the ability to learn, the ability to say, I don't know, and feel comfortable in saying, I don't know the answer to that is really, really important for us. In being able to ask the questions. I mean, we say there is no question that is a silly question, even though we keep saying, I've got a silly question for you. No question is a silly question, because what you don't want is people to go out there with assumptions. Right? Semantics is a really interesting space, because there are words that have multiple meanings. Now, me and you may use one acronym in one way, and another person may use another acronym another way. If you know you're not in the same organization, it's prudent for you to go, can I just check that that acronym means this, rather than you assuming that it is this, and then you end up
That's grand.
in a completely so that growth mindset is as basic as just being able to ask, are we on the same page? It's about being comfortable saying, I'm not 100% sure. So my team may ask me a question, and I am now comfortable to go, I don't actually know the answer to that, but I'll come back and I'll get the answer for you, because I do want to know myself and I want to get the answer for you. I have been in organizations where I have not felt comfortable doing that. And it's meant that I have taken on a lot of pressure myself to try and learn everything, to try and know everything. And of course, that's impossible. I don't have all the skills that I need to know everything and learn everything, especially in the digital marketing sphere. I have to be comfortable with knowing what I do know, and knowing my limitations and my boundaries, and being able to go, well, I don't know that, but I'm going to bring someone else in. So, deep down, I've had that growth mindset, because I've been able to go into unknown territories and ask the questions and know. But you also need to be given permission to be openly in that sphere, to openly say, I don't know. I've had to do it previously in behind closed doors, is go to friends that I know are going to understand that I don't know and not make a big deal about it, for example. But I think it's refreshing to be able to do that in the open. So growth mindset is definitely one of those. Client obsession is another one. So, having empathy, being an active listener, being able to understand the positions of others, or wanting to understand the position of others that are coming. And then, of course, being accountable for your own actions. You're representing an organization. And I think that's true for any organization you go to. As an individual, you have to show that you are accountable for these things, and that it's not just down to a select few and just the leadership. We build businesses. The people within the business make the culture. Everyone is part of that. And so it's really important for us. And one of the things that I loved about my own journey into Microsoft and the recruitment process there was so much emphasis on cultural fit. There was so much emphasis on, are you going to fit into our culture? Are you part of that culture? It wasn't necessarily on my skill set. They'd already done that in the CV. The CV already told them the minimum criteria that I needed. All of the other conversations were very much about, do you have the growth mindset? Are you accountable for actions? So some of the questions were things like, tell me about a time when you took an action and it wasn't quite the right thing to do. What did you, what didn't quite work out how you expected it to? What did you do next? How did you tackle that? So those sorts of questions really start to look at how are people happy to say, it wasn't my best move, it wasn't the best thing to have done, and I learnt from that. I pivoted in this way, or things like that.
Thank you, Supriya. I can see that culture plays a massive role when it comes to getting people in the same, alignment with how things were built internally and how you'd like to continue to build them moving forward. I haven't even noticed how the time has flown by, because it's been so fulfilling, so warm, so detailed. I totally resonate with what you were talking about, and I think not only the younger professionals might find it useful, but it's also those ones who are changing their careers, those ones who are pivoting their leadership skills might find it really useful in their journeys. And there are a few traditions that I'm wrapping up the interviews with these days. One of which is you have alluded to the fact that there are some tools that are helping you keep and navigate that constant learning endeavor. would there be any particular books or content platforms that, be it a podcast, be it, a particular content that you absolutely resonate with, that you would like to share, that you absolutely feel, oh, that's my piece?
Well, first of all, I should also say that I didn't realize how time has flown by as well. And you've been an amazing host. I've
Thank you
loved
so
the
much.
way you've been able to kind of, sometimes I can talk for ages, but you've been able to really listen and package it up really nicely. So thank you so much. It's been refreshing to hear someone, really kind of pick up the pertinent points in what I've been saying and deliver them back to me. So thank you for that.
I'm
I
very
really
grateful,
appreciate
Supriya.
that. But of course, your platform,
Thank you.
the Future Skills is really good, and I think a lot of people would benefit from listening to the varied speakers that you have, especially if they're looking at developing their own careers and their own leadership skills. I think there's a lot there, and we've got some ideas that we've been thinking about as well.
Agreed.
I listen to the Hidden Brain quite a lot. I've been on quite a transformative journey over the past 6 years, I would say, and so I spend time while I'm exercising on podcasts, listening to Hidden Brain, just learning a little bit more about myself. And I think it's really
Absolutely.
important
Yep.
for us to really understand ourselves, how we work, how our brain works, to then be able to help other people understand
Totally. Yep.
how we work so that they can figure out how we can work together. And I think if we all spent a little bit of time doing that, that would be really good. So, the Hidden Brain is a really good podcast series as well. Atomic Habits is a book that everyone knows. Atomic Habits.
Yes.
I haven't read the whole book, by the way, and the reason why is because I didn't need to. There was the key things that I needed, I took out of it, and I do that a lot with books. I don't read cover to cover, but once I've got the key bits that are going to help me,
Just done his
change.
job, right?
Yeah, I do that, and then I might go back to the book again. So Atomic Habits is another one. Time to Hit Refresh by Satya Nadella is another one as well. I think he's got some really interesting live stories within that I think have helped me reposition some of the things that I've experienced or that I've been thinking about and gone, actually, that perspective I didn't take. Maybe if I were to switch that perspective and think of it differently, that would be really good. So those are a few to start with.
It's definitely going to be a lot of food for thought and a lot of, mining through, because you've shared some really great platforms and books. Thank you so much, Supriya. The final bit is, and this is again now a tradition, if we may have a very quick flash interview.
Okay.
That means, quick question, quick answer. Yeah?
Okay.
What do you think?
Okay, I'll
Because
try.
this is the type of exercise that I'm finding a lot of people are then sharing the feedback of saying, oh, that has helped me understand how the person thinks. It's like a thought pattern.
Are you going to score afterwards?
No.
Okay, that's good. No pressure then. Good.
No pressure whatsoever, no. First, what do you think is new in tech? And it's the first thing that comes to mind.
New in tech, I'm not sure if it's new. I wouldn't say new in tech, and I don't want to say AI or generative AI. But what's exciting me in tech is retail media.
Thank you. What inspires you about the future?
All the endless possibilities.
Woohoo, nice. What concerns you about the future?
The endless possibilities.
Thank you. Smart. You are most passionate about?
Inclusion.
Mm-hmm. You are most scared for?
Lack of inclusion.
Mm-hmm. Skills for life or skills for growth?
Skills for growth.
Artificial intelligence or human intelligence?
Can I combine the both? Because I think artificial intelligence is great, but it's nothing without the humans that are building it and are inputting into it. So I would like to say the two together.
Agreed, not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
Most precious skill in the workplace?
Growth mindset.
Most dangerous skill in the workplace?
Fixed mindset.
Mm-hmm. How would you describe your job to a 5-year-old?
I help brands like Coca-Cola, maybe not the right brand for a 5-year-old.
Lego?
I help brands like Lego. So I would help Lego show their advert in the right place to the right person at the right time.
Thank you. I feel privileged for our conversation today and the opportunity. Thank you so much, Supriya.
Thank you.